Greetings and salutations, guys. I'm here with my review of Disclosure Day, the newest film from the one and only Steven Spielberg, and his return not just to science fiction, but his return to a movie about alien life. This time out, we focus here on Josh O'Connor playing Daniel Kellner, a guy who is on the run with information about alien life, and Emily Blunt as Margaret Fairchild, who works at a news station in Kansas City delivering the weather, who suddenly finds she can speak in many different languages, including one that is not human. The movie essentially follows two groups who are trying to get a hold of Margaret and Daniel, one very ominous and with unlimited resources, led by Colin Firth playing Noah Scanlon, and then you've got this smaller scrappy group led by Coleman Domingo as Hugo Wakefield, who want the public to know the truth and believe that Margaret and Daniel are exactly what they've been looking for to make this possible. Overall, I found Disclosure Day to be a highly effective movie with some great moments throughout. There are some clunky beats as well, there are some ham-fisted moments, but by and large, I thought this movie was just so well done. Not shocking given who made it, but really just had such an interesting tone to it and also just approach to it. And that starts from the beginning where I felt like Spielberg was almost taking a page from his good buddy George Lucas, because this movie could open with Disclosure Day episode 4 at the start and it would kind of feel right because so much is already in motion as the movie begins. Josh O'Connor's character is already on the run. Someone has been kidnapped. People are trying to get a hold of this crucial information. And it's very much, the feel that there are previous chapters and we are catching up, not in a bad way. I'm using Star Wars as a correlation because no one felt like Star Wars, they were lost. That was kind of the fun of it, was like, okay, this is something that's been going on for a while and we are going to pick up in this crucial moment. The sort of moment of truth now is coming forward. And I thought that energy really worked well. Also, the fact that this movie really feels upfront, especially like a spy thriller. Look, it's not a new thing in a movie of this sort, of any story of this sort, to have the government conspiracy and the cover up and people who don't want, the truth out there. I'm making some references that instantly feel like the X-Files, because that is a big part of that show. But the way that this feels, the approach of this really has a spy thriller vibe in the beginning, especially, has these characters are using, all these tactics, all these resources to try to stop this thing from getting out there and how people are sort of tracking other people. And I think that tone really works well with the story being told here. Also, of course, it's just intrinsically fascinating to have Spielberg return to a story about aliens. Look, this guy keeps doing iconic movies about alien life, right? And Close Encounters, we had kind of the connection to alien life reaching out to us who had good intentions, and they were kind of at arm's length until the very, very end of that movie. And E.T. was about alien connecting with us for good reasons, and it was very personal and up close because it's a one-on-one connection throughout that movie. War of the Worlds, complete opposite. They just wanted to kill us. They did not like humans at all. So now you've got him going back to this with a fourth time, and the fascinating thing is to kind of see what is the dynamic here between aliens and humanity, what is being told here and being played out. And I love Spielberg returning to this at different times of his life and with different perspective, and what is he saying about it all and how it's not going to always match. Now, the easiest correlation here is Close Encounters because it has the most similarities as far as aliens kind of reaching out to humanity in a certain way, and these people that are just specifically affected and sometimes don't even understand why, but now feel this sort of compulsion to go certain places and do certain things in, search of this larger truth. And I think it is really in an interesting conversation with Close Encounters because it doesn't feel like a copy of it. It just feels like, oh, we're in the same realm and dealing with it in from a different, perspective. And I love that in the movie. Also, this Spielberg guy, he is really good with action, shockingly. Yeah, there are some moments here that have a very Indiana Jones flavor. It's not what the movie is doing start to finish, but things get appropriately intense. And when you have a scene, say, when Josh O'Connor and Emily Blunt are on a car that has been smashed up against a train that's being dragged along, and they're trying to get off onto the side of the train, and someone is shooting at them, and another train is coming at them. You can see how this guy being Spielberg, has always just had such a natural flair for this sort of thing, and how he can just build the tension so well and have these different elements one on top of each other in a way that is really especially thrilling, but also fun at the same time. And hey, if you're going to have a car chase, why not have a car just smash straight through a house? Because that is always very fun, right? The performances here are great. Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor are really wonderful playing these two characters that come into the story from very different, sides of things, because he already knows everything. She knows nothing about this situation. And yet they both are at these key moments where what is happening to them, yeah, it's just is giving them this greater purpose than they've ever had before. At the same time, unraveling things within them that maybe were always there, but they never quite understood. And I think they both play it so well, and they play a really lovely connection between the two of them. The way they finally meet is great. It happens in a very different way than you might assume, and is based on the situation, and also the fact that Margaret does find herself with these new abilities that she never had before, and what she can do with them, which is really great. I really love the way this movie uses, I keep saying abilities. I'm trying not to give too much away, but the fact that in this movie, people can do bigger than life things. And sometimes they can do it just themselves, and sometimes they need technology to assist them. But I think that it's approached here in a different way than we normally get, so that it just feels a different vibe to it. In one case, you have got Colin Firth doing some things that are very difficult to do, which is to say, this isn't X-Men. This isn't like, oh, I can just raise my hand and I can do this amazing thing. There is a toll, there is a burden. You see the sort of science behind it, without overly explaining it, without having people go into huge dialogue, exposition about it. You just see this is not easy, and it is tricky to do, and it is dangerous to do. And I really liked that depiction of it. This movie is filled with things where they don't over explain, that I think are done in the absolutely correct way. I didn't feel myself going, I don't understand this. I feel like you get just enough information to get the gist of it. And that's really what you need to, you could fill in the blanks. And sure, they could make some Disclosure Day books or comics and maybe fill in those blanks a little more directly. But I don't think when you're watching the movie, you are lost. You are fully immersed in this story. I mentioned that, yes, there are some clunky moments. Scripted by David Koepp, longtime collaborator of Spielberg, a guy who's written major, huge blockbusters, some of the biggest movies of all time, but then he also does his smaller side projects, and has written some great scripts. And then, I think sometimes he's written Crystal Skull. No one is perfect. Spielberg directed Crystal Skull, so no one is perfect. I think that most of the script is very strong, but there are some times where things get, they get a little cheesy, a little on the nose. There's an interesting, not subplot, but a theme here about how would people with a lot of faith react to learning about alien life. Alien life has a just undeniable thing. And how could they deal with that? How could they sort of parse that out? And it's an interesting topic to bring up. It could be its own movie. Here it's more, a flavor of the movie. I think the way it is first brought up is way too sort of a big a shift. It just it really comes in hot, comes in a little too hammy when it's first brought up. There's another scene about this topic that I think is excellent and really good. But yeah, there are a couple moments where it kind of gets a little overly blunt, no pun intended on its leading lady, about the way it is putting in a certain theme. There's also some stuff with animals that I don't think quite lands and can feel a little silly at times. But most of it, I think, is very entrancing. It really grabs you and pulls you along. I really also have to mention, amongst this excellent cast, and obviously that includes Colin Firth and Coleman Domingo and these people that, are, we know that they are great and they are giving great performances here. But I really want to single out Eve Hewson, who plays Jane, who's Daniel's girlfriend, and is someone who does not know what's going on at the beginning of this movie and is quickly going to have to be caught up on it. Eve Hewson is an actress who's been around for a while. If you look at her IMDb, she has a lot of credits. She actually worked with Spielberg before on Bridge of Spies, but she's by no means a star. I think this will be the movie where a lot of people discover her for the first time. And she's really terrific here. The way her character reacts to what's happening, the fact that she becomes sort of this pawn at some points, but how she's trying to fight back against that. I think that she just sort of brings so much strength to this role and, is just really wonderful to watch on screen. She really holds the screen and I think really steals the show in some scenes. And I think this is going to give her a lot more bigger roles. The score is, of course, by John Williams. It's a Spielberg movie, so it's almost always going to be John Williams, who in his 90s, still doing such wonderful work, purposely doing a much more understated score than he often does. But when he needs to kick it into high gear, of course, he's going to deliver. And I did notice that there is a little part of this score that feels reminiscent of a certain musical theme from Close Encounters. And I'm guessing that's probably not a coincidence. And I really, just love that he is still doing such phenomenal work. One of the most, important musical creators of all time, I would say. It felt like my audience coming out of Disclosure Day was a bit split on this movie, and I talked to some other people who loved it just as much as me. I talked to some people that it just did not work for as well. But I don't know. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that there is a lot to chew on here. Personally speaking, it left me very emotional with its overall message. When it ended, I thought it was very impactful in an especially cynical time and a time where it just feels like we're meant to accept obvious lies. It's got a message about how the truth will set us free and also likely unite us that it's easy to also be cynical about. But I personally found it very lovely in its optimism. Is it Spielberg's greatest movie in the past 20, 25 years, as some of the early reactions were saying? I don't know if I agree with that just because I loved The Fabelmans so much. I loved West Side Story so much. Look, every single movie he's made hasn't been, the greatest movie ever, but so many of them have. This is just such a stellar filmmaker. He has raised the bar for himself to tremendous heights, but especially the fact that his last time dealing with aliens was War of the Worlds, and looking at this film and where he is at now in his life and when he's saying, it's so interesting to look at, and he is so freaking talented. And I watched this movie once more in awe of that talent and what he is delivering here. So, yeah, I really liked Disclosure Day. It is obviously going to be in theaters everywhere this weekend. If you can like and subscribe, that would be wonderful. Thanks a lot. Take care.